I feel like since I worked at Netflix for 10 years and I watched the change of the Netflix culture over those years, I felt like this was a most excellent article to take a little gandering at. The responsibility over freedom, how Netflix culture has changed. The company's latest internal memo about its corporate culture is more about how it expects employees to behave than what it wants to become. Okay. Netflix has long been a company known for its secrets. No Nielsen ratings, little feedback on why shows are canceled, no box office numbers for the rare movies that are actually released in theaters. Yeah. I think that's pretty great. I think that's pretty great that we just don't that Netflix didn't do that. Yet for a place defined by its opaque approach to the outside world, the streaming giant has long been aggressively transparent internally. The company's philosophy was immortalized in 2009 when Reed Hastings, the company co-founder and chief executive, first laid out the corporate ethos in a 125-slide presentation that introduced new buzzy phrases like stunning colleague and the keeper test and honesty always. So this right here, my wife was 7 months pregnant. 7 months pregnant. And I remember getting the call to interview at Netflix, and I read through this. And man, I love this because right here, I believe the next slide talks about Enron, right? Right, here we go. Many companies have nice-sounding value statements displayed in the lobby, such as integrity, communication, respect, excellence. Enron, whose leaders went to jail and which went bankrupt from fraud, had these values displayed in their lobby. Integrity, communication, respect, excellence. I loved this. When I was reading this, man, I was like, this is good. This is actually what I want. I want a company with a little bit of balls here to actually say like, hey, you got to live up to some sort of standard. And so I really liked that feel a whole bunch. And then on top of it, I really, really, really liked, don't be evil. It's just such a stupid phrase, right? Don't be evil. That's why Google dropped it, is because it's a meaningless phrase. And the Netflix doc always got passed around my old job. And I remember, again, wife 7 months pregnant. There's another one that I think is really amazing. Oh, I'm going to find it. Judgment. Yep. Hold on. It's a B performance gets a grade A severance package, right? Here we go. High performance. Here we go. Imagine if every person at Netflix is someone you respect and learn from. Yeah, I like this. Great workplace is not espresso, lush benefits, sushi lunches, grand parties, or nice offices. I love this. When I read this, I actually love this because I was coming from a job that I was working 60, 70 hours a week at, with the nice lunches, with the sushi things, with this glorious office, with the ping pong tables, with everything. But I worked myself to death, right? By the way, but that doesn't make a good workplace. Benefits like this does not make a good workplace. It doesn't, right? It just doesn't. And so I really liked that. And so hold on. Unlike many companies, adequate performance gets a generous severance package. This is what made me take the job. That right there. This was the line. Yeah. Wild, huh? Anyways, I really, really enjoyed that line. I really, really enjoyed that line. I really felt like that was a good reason to go and work at Netflix, because if it's true, that means I'm going to really like who I'm working with. I'm working with people that are actually going to try. Like, not kind of try, but actually try. And I will say, over the years, this was lost. So I'm curious what they're going to say here, how Netflix culture has changed. The presentation, with its insistence on constant and unfiltered candor, felt both brutal and refreshingly antithetical to Hollywood's normal way of doing business. Well, we weren't in Hollywood. We were in the Valley, which is also very, very true. It's very antithetical to the Valley. To the frustrations of former employees and current competitors, it may just be the blueprint that has enabled Netflix to have so much success while its rivals have stumbled. 3 more culture memos have followed over the years. Before being released, they are pored over and analyzed for months by top executives. At the same time, any employee can pop into the Google Doc where the memo is being assembled to leave the thought or comment. This is also true. Virtually every single document is open at Netflix except for like earnings announcements documents. Just because they don't want any numbers specifically leaked. Though I did, I got emails every day to show me the exact amount of signups in the exact countries at every single place. And so I was able to see exactly where everything was at, which means that I could guess literally the revenue almost to the T, right? I could see every last thing. The latest iteration of the document was released internally on May 8th and will soon be made public. Underwent 8 months of vetting and received 1,500 comments from employees, according to Sergio Ezama, a Netflix chief talent officer. It is 5 pages long, half the length of Mr. Hastings' final memo in 2022, and some core tenets have changed, however slightly. When Mr. Hastings titled the 2009 presentation, Netflix Culture, he gave it a subhead, Freedom and Responsibility. This is, again, this is why I joined, was that. And it's because I loved this aspect, and I lived out this aspect too. It's the reason why I was able to change teams. It's the reason why I was able to get into open source work. It's the reason why I was able to work on the television platform. It's the reason why I was able to work in gaming for a while. At the end of my time, I was working on gaming, and that is because I simply pushed and just said, I think this is the best problem. And I took my freedom and I created something, and I took responsibility for not doing what I was supposed to do. And at the end, they liked it more. My boss was like, oh, this is much better. Do that. You do that. So I really, really, really liked that aspect of Netflix. And I truly did try to live out the freedom and responsibility idea of trying to do what is best for the company, whether or not it was good in the moment. If you want a vacation, take a vacation. If you have a baby and need to go on leave, go on leave. Yeah, I did 6 months leave for my last kid. Documents were shared widely throughout the company without any fear of leaks. While those principles remained in practice, by the way, a fun story, in 2016 or 15, when Netflix did its global launch at CES, we had 1 year of communication where we talked about it internally. We had 2,000 employees. We had emails going out to the entire company, and not a single leak happened. Think about that for a second. That is pretty damn cool, that you could have so many employees knowing that we're about to go global and nobody leaked it. Today at Netflix, you can't have anything go out without it being leaked. Now everything gets leaked immediately. I call it the Hollywood effect. Back then, it was just the Valley, and it was just a bunch of hardcore programmers. And I personally think it's how we hired and how we fired that made that possible. And that culture is just not there today. It's not the same. It's not going to be the leak clout. Yeah. And I think Hollywood, it was very frustrating. Some people are asking me why I left. I didn't run away from Netflix. I very much so loved it. It was the last vestige of my childhood. I worked at Netflix before I had any kids. I now have 4 kids. It was the last vestige, and I quit 2 months ago. And it was very, very sad. And if I think about it, I will just start crying because it was like a very important place in my life. It is where I personally think I went from being a boy to becoming a man, not because of the job, but because of the life change of having a kid, going through a bunch of stuff, all the different things that happened. And so it was a very, very important phase of my life. And so when I quit, I did not run from Netflix. I ran towards streaming and doing this full time. I'm doing it because you guys have supported me. You watch YouTube videos. You guys are signing up for boot.dev. Yeah, #ad. But I want you guys to become backend engineers, or at least learn what backend engineering is. And so I can make courses on this website that pays me well enough that I can do this. And so I was very happy about that. And I was glad that I could make that jump. That's it. Like, that's the reason why I left, is not because I was running from a place, but running to something else, which is a very important difference. Some people run from places, which is much different than running to a place, if that makes sense. While these principles remain in practice, the new memo highlights Netflix's philosophy of people over process. This was another reason I was very excited, which is also another reason why I only have had maybe 20 stand-ups in my 10 and a half years at Netflix. We hire unusually responsible people who thrive on the openness and freedom. Yes. The keeper test, which is defined as, if X wanted to leave, would you fight to keep them? Now includes the disclaimer. The keeper test can sound scary. In reality, we encourage everyone to speak to their managers about what's going well and what's not going well on a regular basis. I really dislike this. I really wish we kept it like this. Honestly, this is the fall of Netflix. As you can see it happening. I think the culture is slowly eroding, going towards this really safe, we got to be a safe place. We can't make anyone feel bad. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to worry about that. If you don't want to be there, if you're not willing to, pull up your pants and be a big boy, big girl, then sorry, like, that's that, right? If your boss doesn't think you should work here, then you shouldn't work here. And I was fine with that mentality because I think that it's a good mentality. Because it created it created the Netflix that I grew up in, and I thought that was an amazing Netflix. There is a sentence in the last memo that reads, "Not all opinions are created equal." It's a good statement. I think I like that. I like that a lot. Only until the boss is doing a good job. I think it applies to everything, right? There's a sentence in the last memo that reads, "Not all opinions are created equal." Because as the organization has grown to more than 13,000 employees, it is no longer feasible for everyone to weigh in on every decision. Fair. There's a scale. It does not scale. By the way, that's a very fair thing, is that things no longer scale. What worked at Netflix when we were 2,000 employees does not work when you have 13,000 employees. Very, very fair. The company has never one to shy away from reorganizing itself, a feature that critics say happens too frequently and leaves employees worrying that they could be fired any day. I've never felt that way. The only firing I knew from reorganization was from 2 reorgs. One, the deprioritization of Windows, because remember, there's like the Windows Phone and all that crap. As that slowly left, obviously, we deprioritized that. And it's not like you're reorganizing, you're just kind of doing away with. And then the animation department, I think in 2021, we said we're no longer investing in as much animation. And that resulted in, I think, 100 people getting let go. And that was the extent that I knew of. So I never really experienced this, and I know nobody that experienced it. I was reorged 6 separate times. It meant that my desk was moved all the time, which was super annoying. Mr. Hastings has moved on to the executive chairman role. Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters are the co-chief executives, and change is always afoot. Still, the latest culture memo feels much more about how the streamer expects its employees to behave rather than a treatise for what it wants to become. Fun story. At one of the company meetings when I was early there, they used to make you dance, by the way, at every company meeting. If you're new to Netflix, you used to have to do a Netflix performance, which I was a butler. I served some dishes and then did a little twirl and walked off stage. That was it. That was mine. But at one of the company meetings, Hastings burnt his T-shirt that he kept from his Quickster interview. And we played the interview where he talked about separating Netflix into 2 companies, and he wore this like greenish shirt. And then afterwards, he said it was his worst mistake. And so he took it and burnt it on stage. It was pretty cool. It was pretty good times. We effigied the shit out of that one, right? Reed Hastings, the co-founder of the former chief executive at Netflix, set the company's culture, which he described as uncomfortably exciting. It's fair. The key about Netflix culture is we really try to systematically think what generates long-term excellence. I like that. I like that, and that's why a big thing that's changed super large at Netflix over the last couple of years or last 10 years is directness. And I think that's just a culture shift in America more than anything else, which is that you can't be direct with somebody, because if you're direct with somebody too much, you're being mean, and being mean is not okay. I remember my first couple of weeks at Netflix, I had a very senior engineer there that worked there for a very, very long time. We'll call him Jay. If you actually worked at Netflix during that time, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about on the TVUI team. He was a bit gruff, but he came up and he was super, super intentional about his feedback on one of my PRs. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it because it gave me exact insight into what I was doing wrong. And it wasn't some flowery, nice little thing. It was just like, yo, you messed this up. You need to fix this because this isn't the type of code I want to see in my code base again. And like, that's good. That's what you want. It was very direct. There was no like, hey, like I know you're new here and maybe you're unaware of things. It was no, hey, you're a senior engineer and this is not good material. You didn't research the memory impacts of what was happening here, and I'm very upset that you allowed this to happen. Please, next time I expect you to do more research before you submit a PR. The end. Redo it, please. And that was good. Some coding guy? No, it wasn't some coding guy. Anyways, somebody else has set up here. It sounds like, just so I can address this, sounds like you regret, man who regrets. No, I don't. I don't regret it a single second of my life. And that's stupid. That's a very stupid observation of that. I'm telling you how good it was and how it's slowly degraded. Now you can't get any kind of feedback. Now everything is very wishy-washy. Very, very wishy-washy. It's a bunch of shit sandwiches, which shit sandwich is like, hey, you're a really great engineer and I really appreciate it. This isn't good, but hey, you're really good, you're really great. And I want you to know that. And the reason why I hate that is that you have no idea where you stand, right? You have no idea what's going on, right? So you just get these shit sandwiches constantly. Just say the thing. I loved it when I used to just get the criticism itself. Mr. Hastings said in a video interview from his home in Santa Cruz, California, certainly a lot of creativity, a lot of freedom, and a lot of focus on innovation and trying to attract and develop people who are self-responsible. This still is largely true, though. In my experience, there was still a lot of largely self-responsible people, and it depends on the team. The newness of the team, the tenure of the team really dictated it. So when I left Netflix, I was on a team where the average tenure was above 10 years. That team was much, much different than the team that the average tenure was 3 years. I think that just makes sense, right? Talk to employees who work at Netflix, and the sense is that the culture tenets have infiltrated their lives in ways they weren't expecting. Many came in skeptical, assuming the memo itself was a public relations effort to make the company stand out, yet Some of those people now describe it as being the 80 to 90% accurate. Yeah, that's fair. 80 to 90% is a fair way to say it. Mrs. Stone, who married months after joining Netflix in 2020, said that she and her husband use certain language now, like, "Do you have any feedback for me?" Okay, well, I would just say in a relationship, you don't want to be so clinical. And he would be the first to say at cocktail parties that he's very good at receiving feedback, and he's still working on giving feedback. This is the Valley. This is like the most Valley ass thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. Oh my gosh. This is like the Silicon Valley to a T. The Silicon Valley is just this place where everybody, I swear, this is just, I don't know how to describe it other than this is it. This could literally be on an episode of Silicon Valley. They're in a relationship. Honey, do you have any direct feedback you could give me right now? I know I'm good at feedback. I'm still working on giving feedback. I just want to let you know I'm working on it, okay? I'm working on it. Let's do a retro. Honey, can we spin up a quick retro? Ridiculous. The document is made to read as aspirational, and there is always room for improvement. Are we always totally direct with each other? No. Are we completely devoid of politics? No. Said Spencer Wang, the Vice President of Finance and Investors Relations, who has been with Netflix for 9.5 years. The company is not perfect across all these dimensions, but I would say it is remarkably accurate description of what we aspire to be and how we generally operate, he said. I did have one, I'd say one positive thing is I did have a boss say that it is unfairly tilted towards people on the left and that people on the right do not get as fair of a shtick at Netflix. And I thought that was at least a really nice observation. I think most companies would not say that. And so I thought that was at least a very honest interpretation of the company. I think the company generally does a good job trying to be neutral as much as a company can, right? Reflecting on its initial presentation, Mr. Hastings admits that leading with freedom was attractive, adding, "It was a good bait." But as the company grew, the concept of freedom and responsibility, which was reduced to F&R, became weaponized by some employees as justification for doing whatever they desired. Dude, okay, this is real. This is real, by the way. 1 year, an assistant expensed $30,000 according to the company's official, but there was no rule to say it wasn't allowed. Let's just say that this is a lower figure comparatively to some other things that had happened. And let's just say that one of my bosses was no longer my boss due to some exorbitant expenses. Wild times. We care about freedom and when it generates excellence, not for its own sake. Yeah. In hindsight, this is the draft I wish we had 15 years ago. The thing is that you gotta have somebody that spends $30,000 and you fire them to maintain true F&R. If you want real freedom and you want people to really feel autonomous, you have to, by the very nature, risk a $30,000 expense, a $90,000 expense. And like, that's just that. Because if you don't actually have, you have no F if you have no R. And sometimes you got to take an R, and sometimes you got to F, yeah. I want to expense 30K. Yeah, you get to expense 30K, but then you lose your job. And so it's like, does it really actually work out? I think a lot of people would realize that when Netflix pays you a lot more than $30,000 a year, losing that and getting fired is not worth some stupid expense. We care about, let's see. From the beginning, Netflix was never going to be a place where most people stayed for their entire careers. Employees' contracts don't exist, and an employee, no matter the rank, can be let go at any time. Yeah, the funny part is the team I was on, again, average tenure is above 10 years. A lot of people really enjoyed what it was. While a few leave on their own accord, voluntary resignation ranged from 2.1 to 3.1% in the last 2 years, which is very low, by the way. About 9% are asked to leave annually. That may be a relief to those who describe the pace as all-consuming and find the company's key tenets of being uncomfortably exciting untenable. The company warns in the memo that the concepts may cause many people to choose other places that are more stable and take fewer risks. The thing is that I was never like a 50-hour person there. I worked on average, I'd say somewhere between, some weeks it was 35, some weeks it was 45. I found that I largely worked 40 hours a week, right? I largely just did 30 or 40 hours a week. It wasn't some crazy workplace. People that say that it was, I never understood that people were saying that, oh, it's like so scary and all that. It's like, no, what you do is you lean into risk. You use your gut and you go, okay, I need to make a decision here. I need to be an informed captain. I just need to make a decision. I'm going to make the best decision here, and I'm just going to lean in. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to worry about all this consensus. I'm not going to worry about taking all this time to ask everybody and just adding an enormous amount of hours to my life. I'm just going to take a risk and say, hey, this is probably the right approach. And like, that's that. and you're just okay. And if you're wrong, you can always fix it later. But most of the time, the things you're wrong about are easily fixed problems. The thing you wait and try to get the perfect answer and all that, you add literally 100 hours and you waste like distributively like 1,000 hours of people's time. And that's where I think a lot of people just really suffered at Netflix. By the way, Code Girl, you said that's same. Are you a Netflixer? Twitchblade, appreciate that. Are you a Netflixer? It'd be awesome if you were. I did not realize that if you were. All right. While some employees, including 2 chief executives, have been at Netflix for over 15 years, many consider sticking it out for 5 to be a significant achievement. And I found it to be a very nominal achievement, personally. Still, some find the pressure invigorating. Brandon Orrig, the vice president of nonfiction and sports, said he often felt stifled when working at the traditional entertainment studios. He calls the culture at Netflix a life preserver that has allowed him to make an impact that he wouldn't have been possible at traditional studios. 5 years ago, he persuaded his boss to release episodes of the reality show Rhythm and Flow in batches for the first time. That practice has been repeated with other reality programs like Love is Blind and scripted programming like Bridgerton and Stranger Things. He said that while the strategy ran counter to what Netflix had done in the past, executives were willing to try, which is also super cool, right? I think this is super cool, is that someone could actually convince people to release things in batches, right? I think it's just cool. Their approach, Mr. Riggs said, was that we hired you, and if you think this is the best thing, and you farmed for dissent, and you've taken in all the feedback, then this is where you land. Let's give it a shot. Yeah, I convinced. So here's a good example of this. We had a product producer, and she wanted to do billboards that play. So, you know, when you go to Netflix.com, it immediately plays a billboard for you, the big full screen video. This was before it played all the time, before it auto-played, right? When we first did that, and I was in on it. I helped create like the full version of that. It already had video and billboard, and there was already people that worked on it. There's special ones with like Adam Sandler and all that. But nonetheless, I was the one that took it from just a little bit of playing to let's do it for everything. And during that test, I said that we have to add a cell that allows for the video to be muted, but has subtitles on, because I think that people prefer volume off. And guess what? Cell 8 was added to the test because I fought for it and I went for it and I did it. And guess what? It did not win. It did not even get close. You motherfuckers are the reason why it continues to play, okay? It wasn't my fault. I built the test. I made the door. I added the subtitles localized to the language that was available that you have preset on most of your videos. I did everything possible that I could to make it amazing. It's you who did not engage with it as much, which is very annoying, okay? So it's not my fault. I did the right thing. Mr. Hastings looked relaxed during the video interview, and that may be because he's rid of the jet lag and insane schedule that used to wear him down as chief executive. His new life of philanthropy and owning a ski mountain may also be helping. Yes, he literally owns a ski mountain. Dude, how effing crazy is that? I think he like co-owns it. He doesn't technically own everything, but he like co-owns it. Just like, yeah, I own a mountain. Or maybe because he's no longer subject to the constant feedback of the company is known for, something many employees find jarring when entering the Netflix vortex, especially when coming from outside the Silicon Valley. Yeah, see, I get like no feedback. When I was there at the final days, I got zero feedback. Mr. Wang said that receiving candid feedback was fine, but that as an Asian American, he initially found it hard to provide it because it rubbed against my cultural background. More recently, he said he was told that he's too direct, so now he's working on being more sensitive. That, my friends, is the death of the Netflix feedback loop right there. Ms. Stone, the chief technology officer, recently recounted being at a happy hour event in New York City where an engineer introduced himself and proceeded to say, "I'm the engineer who wrote the bug in the code that brought the service down 2 weeks ago." I've been that guy. I was the engineer that accidentally made the billboard fail on a particularly high-profile video. I did that. He knew introducing himself that way would make me spark a good conversation about what's the culture around improvement. She said, "It wasn't like, why is this person still here? The person should be fired." As for Mr. Hastings, he may not have to take any more feedback, but he still can dole it out. He said he appreciated that Mr. Sarandos and Mr. Peters waited a year after his departure to reformulate the culture memo as their own. It's 10% better, he said. It's not radically better, but good as any improvement I've ever made on it. So that's a compliment. I would love, I mean, personally, again, as an insider that's no longer an insider, I would love to see that the feedback culture remains real. In engineering, it has effectively died out as far as I can tell. Lady Gaga not mentioned. Lady Gaga specifically not mentioned. I would love to see feedback come back because I think that people are too, honestly, people pussyfoot around the problem. They're too afraid to say anything because if you say something, then it is bad. And I mean, I had some interactions that I just really soured me on the whole feedback thing just because of the, how do I say this in a really good way? There's specific cultural trends as of recent that doesn't allow me to give as direct feedback to specific people. And when somebody severely fucked up, when I gave feedback that they severely fucked up, I was not allowed to do that. And I had to have like a whole HR review, despite me saying, this is more like a game of tennis. You can't just simply drop designs on my lap and say, you will not work anymore. And I was very upset about that because I was like, yo, you went to Harvard. You're very, very smart, but you're acting like a child. You cannot say that. You must work with me all the way through the process and finish off the design. I will implement it, and then you have to review it. That's the way this goes. There's no other way. You cannot drop a design and then say you will not work on it. And that's what got me in huge trouble. And I really hated that. I very, very much so hated that. And so, because when that happened, Harvard Andes, I think that's also where I became disillusioned about Harvard, is that I realized that Harvard isn't some super impressive place anymore because it's producing people in which just complain when they got very obvious feedback. Like if I were to create a piece of code that has bugs and doesn't quite work properly and just dump it on a team and say, hey, you fix it, like that would never work. You would literally never allow that to happen. So why would a set of designs be dropped on me that didn't actually work in practice and needed to be reviewed and changed? Right? And so it's just like, I was pretty frustrated about that. I was like, hey, this isn't okay. Like I could never treat another coworker this way. And so I don't want you to treat me that way. Let's work together. Let's make this a game of tennis. And I specifically talked about tennis. Like it's a back and forth. And I hated that experience very, very much. Anyways, so that was like kind of my souring, I guess, on feedback at Netflix. You know, before people get angry, have some self-reflection. Yeah. And there's a reason why I'm trying to say this very nicely, because I don't want you guys getting the wrong opinion about it, is that I don't want some stupid opinion about things. There's many, many amazing employees at Netflix that would have done it better. But just due to the current cultural feeling, people can take advantage of that. And I found that very antithetical to good feedback. And I was very upset about it, you know, because I felt like greatly betrayed by the culture memo. But luckily, it was resolved and things were moved on. There's a bad egg in every dozen, exactly. And that's the problem, is one bad egg, and it can cause all sorts of problems. Like I said, one of my bosses got fired for expensing insane things, you know? And so it's just very sad. Like, bad things happen, and there's always bad actors. And I never take that as a sign of anything other than an individual is bad. I like feedback that is honest and brutal. I don't get to today's society. Same here, man. Dude, I just don't get it. I wish, like, I understand you shouldn't be insulting in feedback. Like, I don't use the terms, what are you, stupid? This is dumb. No, I say, hey, this is objectively bad code, and here's the reasons why. Can you please redo this? Like, I've never said anything about you. Good engineers create really bad code and make really bad decisions. That is what is expected. If you don't expect that and you expect you to create good code, you are actually dumb. That's like actually a bad opinion. I also hate the phrase, please be better or do better, because I find that is a coward's way of saying I am morally virtuous and you are not. Anyways, sorry, I get really passionate about this stuff because it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Let's see. Do you at least say why it's bad? Oh, of course. Yeah. I say, hey, this is really bad due to memory, due to CPU, due to the fact that you didn't consider these other aspects of our code base. I'm not happy with this, right? Like, I think that's why. You say, hey, this is not good. And the reason why it's not good is like, hey, we already have, say, a utility that already does all these things, and you're just rewriting the code again. I know it's hard to find these things, but this is why the code isn't good. This isn't why you're not good. This is why the code's not good. And also, like, on a million-line code base, how many people don't know parts of it, right? That's like totally normal. This implementation is dumb because of your face and how it makes me feel. Exactly. Just tell me get good, right? Like, you can't. This is why PRs exist. This is the purpose of PRs. I know. I also find that I often don't work with the world these days as much because I prefer the more direct and honest approach to things. Just give me the meat and give it to me raw. A nepo baby. I'm not sure what a nepo baby is. I don't know what a nepo baby is. Yeah, that's normal. And that's why I love Rich Harris. Is I find that Rich Harris gives really good feedback, and it's really, 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 really straight. And there's no insults in it. It's just straight to the point, and it's never like a. It's never like it's never insulting. I really love his feedback. I think Rich Harris is a stellar engineer. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah, I realize that a Nepo baby nepotism. I have no idea if it was nepotism. I have no idea. I don't know that, but it's because he started his career as a journalist. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't have any faith in journalists, just generally speaking. I think today's world is just crazy, right? It's all about just getting the clicks. You know, we've optimized the algorithm, so that doesn't mean anything to me. I think he's just a straight shooting dude, and that's what's good. Anyways, okay. The end. The end. Bye. The name is I no longer work at Netflix anymore. I'm officially 2.5 months out. A Jen.